So I wanted to make a video on here to address a really common theme that I see happen with both fearful avoidance and dismissive avoidance very frequently in relationships. And it's this theme or idea that because their needs are not being met, it's time to leave a relationship situation. And I want to unpack in this video a little bit about why that happens, what it means, and what a better solution is, and a healthier alternative that in practicing will actually help you become much more securely attached and will also diminish some of the deactivation things, patterns of behavior that we'll see when an FA or DA shut down as a means of self-protection or self-preservation. So number one of the most prevalent dynamics that I see with avoidant attachment style individuals, whether it's fearful avoidance or dismissive avoidance, is that they tend to end up in relationship situations where they subconsciously assume that there's no point in communicating their needs, and so their needs won't be met. And when I say subconsciously assume, I mean that it's not consciously registered. It's not like they think about it and say, oh, I should communicate a need, but I don't think it'll be met, so why bother? It's not like they have conscious thoughts about this. It's that they were conditioned from their upbringing that caused them to be avoidant, or whatever past relationship might have caused you to be avoidant. Because of course we can, have our attachment style change because of neuroplasticity in our adult lives. But for the vast majority of avoidance, in their early childhood, their needs were not met, right? For fearful avoidance, they may have met others' needs, which might have made them feel like certain needs were met through a certain degree of closeness, but like their individual needs were usually not seen, heard, or recognized very, very effectively by their caregivers. And same with dismissive avoidance, except it tends to just be to a greater degree. And so while dismissive avoidants are usually exposed to less emotional turbulence in the home, they still have that sort of neglect, which causes them to just assume that their needs will be neglected in their adult lives, even in those close or intimate relationships. And so the conditioning, right, leads them to a space of learned helplessness, which leads them to feel like when they get into relationships with other people, that it's just naturally going to be one-sided. Fearful avoidance, their subconscious comfort zone is essentially one-sided relationships. So they will pour into others actively as a subconscious strategy to feel like they are worthy of connection or closeness. And they will come to, know somebody deeply to get certain needs met. They feel like they sort of have indirect needs met through doing that, but that usually burns them out eventually. And then dismissive avoidance, they get scared to even really invest in somebody because almost immediately they feel like relationships are one-sided. And it's not because the partner of a DA doesn't pour into that relationship, because often they do, but it's just sometimes that the more anxious leaning people that a DA might be partnered with are generally not as aware of what the dismissive avoidant actually needs, right? So dismissive avoidants might need different things than what their partner's pouring into, which again can cause them to feel dysregulated. Now, fearful avoidance and dismissive avoidance alike both struggle with co-regulation, like being able to receive care and connection and also regulate their own nervous system function while in the company or presence of others, which is also part of why you see DAs and FAs constantly sort of pushing people away as a means to recalibrate themselves, because they don't realize that that's something that they can be doing in the presence and company of somebody else through, openness and vulnerability and getting more comfortable being themselves around others. And these are very like subconscious nuanced things that are taking place. But what we really have to cover in this video is how often, because fearful avoidance and dismissive avoidance don't get their needs met, how often that will cause them to just pull away and end relationships or push people very, very far away almost altogether, rather than realizing that, hey, a lot of the things I'm pulling away from are actually solvable problems and could in fact be solved through me recognizing what I would need from this person and expressing it. And so when, one of the biggest steps to actually healing fearful avoidant and dismissive avoidant attachment style on both sides of avoidance are to learn to understand your needs and communicate them clearly. I just wanted to pop in here and let you know we are doing a 7-day free trial to the All Access Membership Pass at PDS, which means you get access to literally everything inside of the school. And this includes the 4 live webinars I do with our students every single week. And on top of that, you get access to all of our different courses. We have over 55 different courses on relationships, communication, boundaries, emotional mastery, guilt and shame, learning your needs, so many different facets that are really important to master our lives and feel really good about our lives going forward. And last but not least, there's a daily community event. We have trained facilitators and coaches who are in there doing that work, showing up to support you on your journey every single day. Please join me on the other side. Come check it out. See if it's a fit for you. I'd love to see you there. Go ahead and sign up by clicking the link in the description box below. So there's a few steps to really doing this effectively. Step number one is to do some work on understanding what your relationship needs are. And it's one of the most important things for healthy functional relationships is to know your needs and be good at communicating them. Now there's a couple other steps to follow when you're actually entering into the needs communication components. And this is, am I communicating my needs clearly enough? I would often work with couples and I would see that they would say things like, I communicated my needs this week to my partner and they didn't listen. And I would say, okay, tell me what you said. And they'd say, I really need you to be more loving in the relationship. And I'd be like, okay, that's a great start. But for somebody with a totally different set of programs, different set of subconscious rules for how relationships are supposed to be, a different attachment style, loving means one thing to them and another thing to you. And we would unpack how to communicate more clearly. So get really specific. What does it mean to be more loving in the relationship? Does it mean to be more present? Does it mean to spend more quality time together? Does it mean to be more affirmative or validating? Does it mean to do more acts of service? Like, what is it that loving means and the expression of love looks like to you? So we have to be clear. We have to be specific. And we have to see our needs through. So we ideally have to kind of like paint this picture of what it looks like and then remind somebody. And a lot of people will rebel against that and say, I don't want to remind somebody. If somebody loves me, they should know. But you have to remember somebody has decades of different programming for what love looks and feels like to them. And so when they're trying to meet you where you are, you have to remind them, we have to help them recondition these concepts and ideas that they're projecting onto you because of their history of programming for what love looks like, and learn what yours are and learn to meet you there. So there's just this inevitability of having to see our needs through at the beginning. And what we'll see is when we communicate our needs kindly, clearly, specifically, and when we see them through, the vast majority of people will show up phenomenally in relationships. Vast majority of times people are like, the person's not meeting my needs, even though I express them. It's usually first because somebody's not doing the expression part properly. And it's okay. Cause like, since when are we learning this? Right. So it's new to us and it's okay to not have all the answers right away. But when I would see people express very properly and use those 4 key ingredients, usually massive transformation in relationships. And if not, you're probably seriously with the wrong person. You're probably with somebody who's not willing to put any work into the relationship. And work is required in relationships, even securely attached relationships. So being able to communicate about those things is super important. Now, as a byproduct of doing those things, guess what happens? Fearful avoidants are actually actively co-regulating with others. Same with dismissive avoidance, because they're giving that information to somebody. Then they feel more comfortable in their presence. Their nervous system function is it just regulates naturally because of that. They feel seen and known and understood and made space for. And they deactivate way less frequently, because deactivation is a coping mechanism for a strategy to get our needs met when they're not being met otherwise. And so when we do that work to get them met while in the company and presence of others, there's less need to utilize the skill of the coping mechanism of deactivation as a means to try to recalibrate. So it's like dealing with root cause, if that makes sense. And of course, there's other things you can work on, but this is such a vital part of relationships and one of the most key ingredients to becoming secure. And also just really important to notice if you are FA or DA, so that you can highlight and recognize when you're sometimes going to deactivate and just push somebody away. Have I communicated my truth first? Have I asked for my needs? Have I, and it's a really powerful checkpoint that will help you reposition the way you're thinking about relationships and doing them to make them more conscious. And by also communicating your needs, relationships become so much more fulfilling. So I hope this makes sense. If you enjoyed this video, if you're enjoying this content, please consider subscribing to this channel. I put out literally daily videos to educate about relationships, the subconscious mind, how to reprogram, and just really powerful life skills to help us transform the way we're showing up if we have some attachment trauma or challenges that are plaguing us from the past. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in future videos.